Can you define neurodiversity for me?
Okay, thanks. Neurodiversity. So I guess we've got to look at it as like two different brains. It's dead exciting. So there's neurotypical and neurodiverse.
Okay.
Like, could you Google? Lovely George, could you Google maybe picture of the different thinking areas of the brain or something like that? What did I Google last night? So thinking brain and thinking behaviors picture, and then basically you should get an illustration of the brain. There we go. So the brain is made up of different compartments. Now I'm not a neurobiologist, neuroscientist.
Which one do we want? That one?
This'll do, I think.
Can we zoom in on that, George?
So you should have like the prefrontal lobe, the amygdala.
Have we got that on there?
I don't know.
Maybe the one on the left, George. The one in the left corner. That one.
But I guess all we need to see is like those different compartments. We've all got those. And a neurotypical brain, those compartments develop at an expected rate.
Right.
So I learned with having children that the prefrontal cortex develops at a particular rate, and we often say to children, like young children, why can't you behave? Or like you try to rationalize with them about like good and bad and right and wrong and stuff. Well, they're the part of their brain that is responsible for rational thinking and logic and like going through emotion of like, oh, if I do that, then the consequences of that will be, hasn't developed. So they literally don't have the brain capacity to do that. It's not just that they're a little shit. I found that really helpful.
Yeah.
So that a neurotypical brain will develop at a set rate, and when something happens in life, the relevant part of the brain will be signaled in a way that you expect it to. A neurodiverse brain, now I need to be clear on this in research. I don't want like neurobiologists going, no, wrong. Can develop at a different rate.
Right.
But when the responses to certain situations could be heightened in different areas of the brain. No, see, that's just like right front, left back. What we want is like the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala.
Can you go back to the main search, George? I think there was one. I
can't remember the other words because I'm just at the beginning of understanding all of this. But I guess like, those parts of the brain's motor area, sensory area. Yeah, so
that'll do.
That'll do for now. So like the sensory area, for example, the bit that is responsible for like touch, sense, touch, taste, hearing, pain, things like that. The receptors might be particularly heightened for someone who is neurodiverse.
Right.
And the prefrontal cortex might be react less to a neurotypical in certain situations.
And is that something that is, so they're naturally born with this type of, right, okay.
So it's neurological.
Yeah.
And I've been finding out the causes, again, widely researched, and there's not a great deal of answers for lots of questions, but the causes can be genetic. There's very other things, but there isn't like, it's not like a kind of like something happened and now they're this. It's not but it's not a deficiency either. It just it's not like a kind of it's difficult, the language around this as well, because you talk about mental disability, and I actually did a little table just for fun last night with mental illness and the things that are considered to be mental illnesses underneath it, which are things like anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, eating disorders, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, so all under mental illness. And then I put neurodiversity, and then some of the same things appear. So, and then, but some also some of the different things. So under neurodiversity, there's ADHD, which is attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder, which is otherwise known as ASD now. There's obsessive compulsive disorder, but there's also dyslexia and dyspraxia, because again, it's about the way that the brain functions.
Yeah.
And then I put in mental disability. And again, some of the same names appear, but then some others. So under disability, there was different types of psychosis.
Okay.
So the disability being that it prevents you from carrying out day-to-day functions, I guess. But obsessive compulsive disorder again was in there. ADHD and autism were both in there as a disability. I can't remember the others. So yeah, we've got that's a really great
Little
little diagram.
diagram.
Acquired neurodiversity. So I cannot impress enough. I am at the very beginning of understanding all of this. But pardon me, neurodiversity came to my attention through some close personal friends and family being diagnosed, receiving diagnosis of neurodiversity, and
Right.
then there being quite a lot of talk on social media. I hate saying that in a way because I don't know about you, but there seems to be this like divide of people are either like, oh, I'm not on social media, or they're like all about their Instagram and like digital content. And I've increasingly become really engaged with and interested in and enjoying digital content, particularly through Instagram. And it's really relevant to the work that I do, both in teaching and in industry. So, and there's a lot of content available out there in terms of like information. And I noticed a lot being reported about undiagnosed adult ADHD and autism. And there being a spike in diagnosed cases over the pandemic. And this being that it wasn't recognised in childhood because socially and culturally, we learn to behave and operate in quite like a set way, or like I guess generationally we have. Or certainly I was, that, you know, this is good behaviour, this is bad behaviour, you don't do this. And I guess through that conditioning and through the kind of your cultural influences, and learnt behaviour, you make yourself operate in a particular way, particularly girls, apparently, because again, cultural conditioning tells us that girls should behave in a feminine fashion and in an orderly fashion, and that, you know, women and girls should do this. And this is a very, very, very kind of like quick way, I guess, of explaining it. So, and for women who actually have underlying symptoms of ADHD, they've learnt to mask them unknowingly. And then through the pandemic, everything's been stripped away. So our social interactions, our work, our activities, our hobbies, and we're put into isolation. So you think all of that's your comfort and the things that you bounce off and help you to keep operating. And with that all stripped away, you're left with kind of the raw, you know,
what's at the bottom?
The raw basis of human beings. And I think through that, a lot of people have found that, oh, man, I really struggle with this, and they've then sought help from a GP and then investigated these. Anyway, long-winded explanation later, you arrive at an actual formal like diagnosis. But it's really powerful though, and it's very common in creatives, neurodiversity.
Okay. And that is that just purely, I guess, as a creative mind, is there sort of like a genetic makeup that would allow someone to be more creative, and therefore they might have these certain traits within their sort of genetic makeup? Is that a thing, or is it more nurture than nature? You know what I mean?
I think it's, so what the argument is, I guess, what the research is presenting, that again I'm interested in and want to find out more about, is that the neurological makeup of someone who is classified as neurodiverse lends itself to creative industries.
Okay.
So like being very aesthetic, very sensory, so aware of how things look, how things sound, how things feel. There's reportedly a large number of people with ASD or ADHD who are very musical or very artistic because of those traits. That they may be more suited to those industries because they're kind of a little bit all over the place, or I don't know. One of the symptoms, there's so much that I didn't know. One of the symptoms of ADHD is having like so much passion, and emotion, and empathy, and so you feel things really powerfully. which is a strength and a great thing, but almost to the point where you feel them like so powerfully, like, and way deeper and more powerfully, like very reactionary, like more than a neurotypical person would.
Okay.
That can often be kind of culturally just like shrugged off as wow, that was like a bit over the top, like over dramatic, or like unnecessary, and actually something that they can't control. They tend to have a lot to say, a lot of thoughts all at once, and struggle to organize them in separate files or have any kind of like succinct fashion. They struggle with impulse control, which is the overwhelming desire to share information, so they end up interrupting or taking over.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to catch up on new episodes every week. Also, check us out on our Facebook and Instagram at RecRooms, where you can find out about our other exciting music series. We also have this and all our other episodes of the podcast up on our RecRooms YouTube channel for your viewing pleasure. See you next time.